Namaskar, I Shambhavi welcome you all to your channel Galactic Echoes. So let's start exploring the wisdom of Vedic astrology. So today we'll be doing all the planets as your Darakarka, that is, if all the 9 planets they have the least degree in your chart, what kind of characteristics and personality they would bestow in your spouse, what can be the characteristics of your future spouse, all of these things basically today's topic is about. So today we'll be doing all the 9 planets as your Darakarka in your D1 chart. All the planets which are they are placed in the least degree in your chart. The least degree can also be 14 or 15 degrees because I have seen those kind of charts as well. But you know that is a different kind of a topic which we might cover in soon, about the degrees of the Darakarka planet. Is it between 0 to 4, 0 to 5 or more than 5 and so on. So basically today we will be going to talk about the core strength, like the core technical analysis of the Darakarka planet. What is it in actual sense? You see, there are more layers to it. Darakarka planet, its placement, its nakshatra, its sign, its house. So it defines your partner, your spouse up to really great extent. But basically we have to understand the Darakarka planet technically first, otherwise we won't be able to understand the further analysis. So basically first we'll understand what is Darakarka. Basically whatever the planets is your Darakarka in your D1 chart, those are the attributes and the areas in your life which will be negatively manifesting in your life. You see, why? Because why is it so that if you for example are having moon as a Darakarka, so moon's negative personality, negative attributes would be channelizing in your life, they would be present in your life. Why? Because technically if we have to see it, the Darakarka planet is having the smallest degree, right? It is normally it is between 0 to 5 degrees. In some curious cases it is 14 degree, it is of 14 degree and 15 degrees as well. I have seen those kind of charts as well, but that is where the analysis differs. You see, now we are sticking just to the fact that we are taking Darakarka only between 0 to 5 degrees, alright. So when the planet is between 0 to 5 degrees, what has happened with the planet, if you have to break it down technically, you just see it that it has traversed the previous sign and the previous house, and as soon as it entered into the second sign, into the present sign, wherever it is placed, into that house you took birth. So for example, what I am trying to explain here is that, let's say if your Darakarka is placed in the sign of Taurus, right, it is placed at 2 degrees for example. So what it did was that particular planet traversed the whole of the Aries sign. For example, you are Aries Lagna, so it has also traversed the first house also, and as soon as it entered the sign of Taurus, the second house, you took birth, and that is when the snapshot was taken and that particular planet became your Darakarka. So what happened with this particular planet is that it is having the knowledge of the previous sign. It is having the knowledge of the previous house because it has traversed, it has completed its journey there and it entered into the next sign. Now, see, this is the kind of situation condition where you have learned like basically science, you have prepared for your science exam, but when you reach your school, you get to know that today is English exam. You see, although it is not a very tough thing, maybe you get to know that today is a mathematics exam. You see, that is what is happening with this planet. So it has the knowledge of the previous sign, it has the knowledge of the previous house, and with that knowledge it entered into a new environment, and there is where this particular planet is confused. You see, I know all about Aries, I know all about the first house, but I don't know about this environment, this new environment, and there is where the complications in your life they start. That is why you are having all the negative traits of that particular Darakarka planet. Why? Because the Darakarka planet is having the knowledge of the previous sign, the previous house, and it is applying that knowledge in a different environment, in a different house, in a different area of your life. That is why there is this misalignment in your chart. That is why the Darakarka's periods, its Antardasha, its Pratyantardasha, its Mahadasha are really very suffering for everyone. The only remedy to this particular thing is that you get married to a desired person with heavy attributes of that particular planet in their chart, in their personality. So they would be fulfilling in the positive aspect of that particular planet, and they will be mitigating the negative aspects of this particular planet in your life, your Darakarka. That is why this union is important, you see. And when the people are not having that much of when there is denial of marriage in charts, or when there is a delay of marriage in charts, that becomes a very karmic bond. So what you will see is that the Rahu-Ketu axis is also playing a kind of important role in the chart then, because it is all about the karma which you have to burn first in order to get married, in order to get the desired person, in order to enter into the correct union. So you see, this is what is happening in the chart. So this is the basic working of the Darakarka. It is a basic core analysis of the Darakarka planet. Now based on this particular fact and this particular nature of the Darakarka, we'll jump into the planets and we'll understand each planet as your Darakarka planet. Also I'll be covering the Rahu-Ketu as Darakarka because they are very important, and in future when I'll be making the videos on Atmakarka and Amatyakarka planet also, then there also in those videos I'll be covering Rahu-Ketu, because I believe that Rahu-Ketu are very important and they should be definitely taken as the Charakaraka, like in the Charakaraka system they should always be calculated. So let's start the video and let's dive in. So if you have Sun as your Darakaraka in your chart, so particularly we are sticking to 0 to 1 degrees. Basically your Sun is placed at 0 to 5 degrees here. We are not taking beyond that kind of a consideration, because that would be, it would require a different video. So when you have Sun as your Darakaraka, the first and the foremost thing is, which you will see in your life, is that you have that kind of an ego and self-respect issues that would be prominently present in your life. And wherever this Sun is placed, in the first house or in whatever house, in whatever sign, those areas will be facing ego battles in your life, and you are the one giving, like you are the one portraying yourself as the superior person in that area, like you are the problem in that particular area, in that particular domain, and you cannot do anything to mend it. Why? Because you are designed to behave like this, you see, because your Sun is in Darakaraka, it is sitting in a particular sign in a particular house, so you will face those kind of issues. Now where this ego is harming your own interest, you won't be able to calculate, because Sun is your Darakaraka and you think particularly to that, pertaining to that particular area in your life, that self-respect and ego is something which should be honored at first. The rest of the things would be following it, and no matter what things happen, this is something which should remain intact, you see, with this particular placement of the Sun as the Darakaraka. Moreover, you might also see yourself facing some vitality issues, some health related issues with this Sun before your married life is started, like basically when you are single in your life, specifically then is when I am talking about it. This is with marriage respect which I am telling you about, because relationships and the 5th house is not the legal contract which is signed. So you see, marriage and a legal contract should be signed to mitigate the ill effects of Sun in your chart. Moreover, you can also face some issues from the father or from your own father or something like that, like authority figures, central government also. All of these people can somehow trouble you. So basically, if you are working, if you are going to give an interview for some document, some random document, and the document authority over that document is of the central government, you will face issues there with this Sun as a Darakaraka. Moreover, father is the figure with whom you will face some kind of ego battles sometime in your life, definitely, that is for sure, with this Sun as a Darakaraka. Now jumping on to your spouse. Your spouse would be the person who would be bringing in a balanced approach to this Sun in your life. Because why? Because he or she is the person who is having control of sun over his personality or over her personality, you see. So the sun is bringing in the positive karakas of the sun would be brought by that particular person into your life. So you might see that he or she will be the person who would teach you how to manage your ego, how to manage your interest related to self-respect. You see, he or she would be the person who would teach you about how to approach your father and the problems and the issues you have with him. He or she would be the person, your spouse, to educate you upon how to deal with central authorities also in life, alright. He or she would also be the person, your spouse, to maintain that kind of a, you know, a positive light, like brightness. Maybe with this sun Darakarka, if you have certain placements in your chart, you would feel depressed. Even if you have a very good career, even if you have a very good, this particular financially you are doing well, but still this particular sun as a Darakarka shows that there is this dimness of light in your life, and the light would be brought in by your spouse. So he or she would be the person who would be bringing in the positive light of the optimism in your life. Moreover, your spouse, if I have to talk about them, they would be very similar to their own father, and they would have a good kind of a relationship with their father. Like whatever you will feel, like whatever is the problem in your life, actually you have issues with your father, you have issues with central government of your country, you have issues with the ego battles and all of the self-respect, domains, areas, and that person in your life, your would-be spouse, would be the person who is really doing well in all of these areas. They would also look very similar to their father. Also, they would have good support from central government also. So maybe they would have studied from a central government college, and they would be in some kind of this government job also. They would have this kind of prominence of sun in their chart. They would be more connected to the people in higher circles, maybe politicians or these kind of bureaucrats, because these are the people who are dominated by sun, and they would be the person who would be very down to earth. You see, this is a fact which no one tells. Why? If you have to ask me why, because you see, the positive sun is the king, and the king is never about, like all the Leo risings. If you will see all the Leo risings, what you will see is that they are very humble and they are down to earth. Why? Because the person who is having positive influence in their chart of the sun, they are more like a nurturing personality. Here predictions would change if you are a Leo rising, or if you have an exalted sun in your chart. Basically, sun plays in the sign of Aries, and if you are not a Capricorn or Aquarius rising. So you see why? Because Capricorn and Aquarius, they go well with this particular definitions which I have told you. But when you are dealing with some other energies, maybe you are Scorpio rising. So Scorpio rising is Mars, and you have Martian energy in yourself, and your sun is the Darakarka. So the analysis would differ. Now there is this kind of an energy which would be reflecting as if you both want each other. With your sun Darakarka and Scorpio rising, it would suggest that you both want each other, because that is a different kind of a combination which is being established here. So although your Atmakaraka will also decide a lot of things, but with sun as the Darakaraka, you would face these kind of issues with the people I have told you, with the Karakas of the sun, from the Karakas of the sun, and your spouse would be fulfilling it in positive sense. Also, I must add that you should watch the introduction part of the video, because there I have explained the working of the Darakarka, and it is important for you to get a better understanding of this Darakarka, because this sun is sitting in a particular sign, in a particular house. So you will be able to decode it in a more meaningful way from there. So let's move forward and let's understand moon as the Darakarka in your D1 chart. Now when you have your moon as the Darakarka planet, so what you will see is that your emotions are something which they are not organized. You have either extreme emotions or so minimal that people often get confused that why is it happening that you are not behaving in a desired manner in some kind of a situation, in a particular situation. So you see, when it is desired to be more subtle, you are more exaggerating things, and when the things are to be exaggerated, you are more subtle. You see, the disbalance of emotion is something which is a theme in your life with moon as a Darakarka. Moreover, secondly, either this thing would be present, misalignment of emotions, or you can also see with this particular moon as a Darakarka that there is complete kind of a, there is this complete misunderstanding, like you don't have any knowledge about emotions. You see, you don't know how to persuade a crying person with moon as a Darakarka. You don't know how to congratulate people when they are achieving something, or you don't know how to react in a certain situation because you don't know how to steer through your emotions. So moon's energy is very disbalanced in your chart with moon as a Darakarka. Now here I am taking only the fact and the consideration that the moon is placed between 0 to 5 degrees in your chart, because I have also seen Darakarka planet sitting at 10 degrees, 11 degrees, 15 degrees in people's chart, and there is where the analysis would differ. But here we are only sticking to 0 to 5 degrees, right? So this is what is the disbalanced state of moon in your chart. Now you are meeting this person because Darakarka is this planet which is representing your spouse in your chart. So your spouse would have heavy influence of moon in his life, in their life basically, and in their personality. So they would be bringing in the positive karakas of the moon. So you see, so near Purnima or Amavasya, that is the full moon or the new moon days, you would feel very anxious or like extreme emotions. Why? Because moon is your Darakarka and you do not know how to steer it. You do not know how to go with it. Moreover, you can also have migraine issues with this particular moon as your Darakarka. The other thing is that, let's come to your spouse now. Your spouse is the person who is having, your spouse is a person who is having heavy influence of moon in their chart. Now they are coming in your life and you are settling up in a marriage alliance. So when you are doing this particular thing, you are activating their 7th house, your Darakarka. They would be the people bringing in positive karakas of moon in your life. So they would be more balanced. They would be more humble. They are knowing more about emotions than you, like they are emotionally educated better than you. You see, they know how to persuade a crying person. They will know how to deal with kids, like children in your marriage, in your union. Your spouse would be the better person to deal with children and their emotions rather than you yourself. You see, because they know what the child is wanting and what he or she is, dealing with is something which is shown here. Moreover, your spouse would be the person who would be very fond of settling to a foreign place or a foreign land near a water body, maybe a sea or a lake or something like that, or actually they might also have a river at their native home or place. Moreover, you can also see that your spouse would be the person who would be having a round face and they would be having thick eyelashes on their face. Moreover, they can also have a kind of a not so prominent birthmark on their face. There are spots on the surface of the moon. So that is what is being represented on their face, like there would be this kind of representation of moon on their face. Moreover, because of the fact that moon is a very bright planet and the brightness is coming from the sun, so you would see that your spouse is the person whenever they go into some parties at night basically at night time, where there are so many lights and the room is filled with all of the halogen bulbs and everything, their skin would glow. You'll see that charm on their face at that particular time of the day. this is what will be the prominent thing. Also, actually it's a very challenging position with women if you have moon as a Darakarka. Why? Because first of all, moon is the representation of motherhood also, you see, and you having moon as a Darakarka. So motherhood can face problems. So maybe you would have faced problems at your childbirth or something like that, or you can face that, or there could be problem with your and your child's relationship after he or she is born. Moreover, you can also see that your spouse is in complete influence of their mother. You see, that is what is the problem, because when moon is a Darakarka for females, the mother issues is something which your spouse would be bringing in, and the mother is always interfering or something like that. That can happen if your moon is placed in extreme positions in the chart. I won't be telling here the positions because that would be negatively activating your thoughts, but yeah, there is this kind of a potential challenge which can be seen in your married life. Moreover, your would be spouse's face would be very similar to their own mother. They would maybe, if they are if their mother is wearing certain design of spectacles, they would be using that same particular design of that particular glasses. You see, this is what kind of similarity will be drawn on their face from their mother. So this is what is seen with actually men. With this placement of the moon as Darakarka, it's a really good placement. Why? Because then the person is marrying to a mother like figure in his life, and mother like figure is what? That the person, your wife, would be bringing in all the nurturing, caring, and all of those sensitive tendencies in your life which you have received from your mother as well. You see, that is what is being represented. So it's very good for males to be having, to have this particular placement of moon as a Darakarka. It might be challenging for women in certain cases, but sometimes if you have moon afflicted in your chart, I am telling this about females, that is better to have a afflicted moon, because then you are more balanced in your life. You know, with this Darakarka, moon is the Darakarka and it's already afflicted, and if it is more afflicted with Mars's impact or aspect, or sitting in Aries sign, or debilitated moon, something like that in the sign of Scorpio, it's better to have that kind of Darakarka specifically for females. So this is what is about the moon as a Darakarka. I will be bringing in more videos about the Darakarka. Also, I must tell you to watch the introduction section of the video where I've explained the working of the Darakarka. It would be very important for you to understand the working of the Darakarka in a more meaningful manner. Let's move forward and let's understand the planet Venus as your Darakarka. Now, when you have Venus as your Darakarka, and here I am only taking into consideration that your Venus is placed between 0 to 5 degrees, not beyond that, because then the analysis would differ. So basically, when this is the Venus and the Darakarka in your D1 chart, you will see that you are having negative Karakas of Venus manifesting in your life. That is for sure. Why? And the answer to why I have explained in the introduction part of the video. Go and watch it there. But basically, negative Karakas are manifesting from the side of Venus in your life. So whatever gender you belong to, you won't be having female friends in your life. You won't be having sense of beauty, luxury in your life. Why? Your beauty and your luxury would be more Mercurian, would be more balanced and calculated with this Venus. Venus is the planet which gets exalted in the sign of Pisces, you see, and when it is your Darakarka, then Mercury is heavy in your chart. Then you will be either you are Virgo rising, or you will be having moon in your Virgo or Gemini, something like that. So basically, when your Mercury is heavy in the chart, Venus's attributes are lost. The Venusian attributes are more like, there is this particular meme going on social media, that people who are into art, they are well dressed and they are well behaved, they are well behaved in the society, they are talking in a very good manner. And people who do art, then there is this person who is in blankets and he is looking like a pauper. You see, this is the difference. The pauper is the person who is Venus, in actual sense. And the person who is very well behaved, who is very mannerful, is the person who is more having Darakarka as the Venus, because they want to associate themselves with Venus. You see, this is what the paradox is. But the Venusian traits are very less present in the essence, because Venus, its exaltation in the sign of Pisces is all about imagination. It's all about letting go of things. It's all about separation, isolation. And when you are more dressed, when you are more representable, is not the Venus, it's more Mercury. So this is what is the basic Karaka manifesting in your life. You won't be liking to attend family functions with Venus at the Darakarka. You won't be loving to go at marriage parties or birthday parties, connecting with your relatives. But you would want to party hard later on in your life when you'll get married. And the party is not related, it's not family function basically, it's more of a private party with this Venus in your chart as a Darakarka. Now here we jump onto your spouse. He is the person or she is the person who enters your life upon this marriage alliance, and they are having heavy influence of Venus in their chart. So first of all, what they will do in your life is that they will suck out this kind of a balancing, calculative energy of yours, and they would be fulfilling in the more Venusian traits in yourself. That Venusian and artistic beauty is not about calculation. You see, you cannot calculate it 2, 3, 1 and something like that, like the steps. You see, the choreographers are making people they are choreographing people, and they are making them do steps like 3, 2, 1 based on the counting. This is not Venus, this is more Mercury in a debilitated state, basically in Pisces. So the spouse is someone who is bringing all of those Karakas. The other thing is that yes, your spouse would be beautiful, and beautiful is actually, beauty is a word very subjective. So maybe someone who you will find beautiful is not accepted as beautiful by the world. Moreover, this is not the inner beauty which I am talking about. They would represent themselves as a charming person. You see, it is the exterior beauty which I am talking about. Venus gives more of a exterior kind of a beauty. Interior kind of beauty is more represented from moon. There is this person, there is this going that inner beauty is everything which everyone needs. But with Venus, this particular proverb doesn't go well. Because Venus is more about makeup. Venus is more about how you represent yourself. Venus is more about how you make others attracted towards yourself. You see, this is what Venus is. And when the person is having heavy Venusian traits in it, so that is the person who is knowing Venusian art and beauty from its core. He or she would be the person who would only select clothes according to their skin tone. They would be the person who would be it would irritate them if you would say anything wrong in the direction of this aesthetic realm. If you are telling them that this color is something which I really like, and they would be saying that this is not, it does not go well with this particular piece of cloth which you have already purchased. This is a kind of person you would be seeing as your spouse, and they would be really having a good physique, a good appearance from the outer self. Now what is inside them is something which will depend on their lagna, on their Atmakaraka. So, and of course about this particular Darakaraka placed in a sign and nakshatra and the house, a lot of things would also depend on that, but basically they would be charming and attractive looks wise. So that is for sure. Moreover, the attraction is something which would be built instantly with this Venus as your Darakaraka. Why? Because Venus is the Karaka of marriage, and whenever you are getting married, Venus is getting triggered, or whenever you are starting, you are entering this kind of environment where there is the talks going on about your marriage or something like that, Venus will be activated in your life. And when it is activated, you would see that life is suddenly very optimistic. Life has become very beautiful suddenly. So this is everything, and this is the kind of a theme which will play out in your life. Moreover, it's more of a, if your Venus is not afflicted with this Darakarka placement in your D1 chart, it's more of a fairy tale you will be witnessing in your married life. Why? Because if your Venus is well placed, it's not afflicted, then from the with the outer beauty, your partner is also having inner beauty in himself or herself. So that is why the problems won't be coming in your life. So for that, you will have to check your 7th house, 7th lord, your Venus as the Darakarka, where it is placed, the impacts on it and everything like that. But it's basically this union of yours with your spouse can really create, like you can really move big stones in the aesthetic, in the creative world. Why? Because you are more Mercurian, he or she is more Venusian, and when the Mercury and Venus they combine, they can really make good amount of creative ventures in this world. Venus and Mercury, they go well in well because they are more on the opposite poles, extremes in the life, in this in Jyotish. So basically this is what you will see, this is what will be happening in your life. Moreover, the person would be very diplomatic, he or she would be very balanced in their approach. They would be only texting whatever is needed, saying whatever is needed, not more than that, not less than that. Moreover, there would be more of a this kind of a optimistic personality. They would also be very hardworking actually, and you will see all of these traits in your spouse with this particular placement. And for males, it's a very good placement because Venus is automatically your Karaka of wife in your chart, and it is your Darakarka. So your wife would be fulfilling in all the feminine like spaces in your life. So it's really a very good placement. From females perspective also, it can be a good placement if your 7th house, your 7th lord and your Venus Darakarka is not compromised. So this is something which you will have to analyze. And your spouse would also be very fond of sweets, and there are more characteristics of your spouse with this Darakarka. I'll be making videos in future about that. So now let's move forward. Let's understand Mars as your Darakarka planet in the D1 chart. Now when you have Mars as your Darakarka planet in your D1 chart, so the Mars is a kind of a warrior spirit planet. It's more of a soldier, it's more of a battlefield person who is out there fighting for the common good. Now here I am taking into consideration that your Mars is placed between 0 to 5 degrees in your chart. Beyond that, Darakarka's definitions and predictions would differ, its analysis would differ. So basically when your Mars is Darakarka, so this is the soldier, warrior and the fighting spirit which is being represented and is misaligned in your chart. You would be facing trouble or negative impact of this Mars in your life. So how can it manifest is that particularly whatever gender you belong to, male or female, you do not know how to fight. That is for sure. Whenever there are scenarios of fighting or something like that, like physical fighting is something which I am talking about, verbal abuse also sometimes, if your Mars is compromised, so it won't be that physical in its terms. So whenever there is this fighting happening or there is something, you would take out the diplomatic path. You would take out, you would be more on the inclination towards let's talk it out and let's figure it out, and do not engage in fight. You would pick up flight rather than fight. But because of the misalignment, there is also something of a extreme opposite sense which can also happen, that when you decide that I have to fight this person, I have to get in this physical physical fight with this particular person, you would not be knowing when to stop. Or if you get to know that there is no way out other than facing these people and fighting with them physically, then in that moment you won't be knowing when to stop. So this is a very dangerous kind of a placement actually with Mars at the Darakarka, because the aggressive tendencies in you are misaligned. You see, so if your Mars is actually afflicted, maybe it's debilitated or something like that, it's better. because when the dangerous when the dangerous side of the Mars is more mitigated in the chart, it's better, because the time you are single, like you are not married, there is where you don't know what the things, what kind of things can happen. And actually with the Mars having with the Mars periods, basically Antardasha, Pratyantar and the Mahadashas, you would face all of these things, all of these challenges. Maybe you'll think that somehow the world is nudging you to get into, to pick up these fights. You would be, trying to avoid people, trying to avoid fights and everything, but you would feel that somehow they are coming back to you again and again with this Mars at the Darakarka. So the energy is very misaligned. Energy is very, disbalanced when you have Mars at your Darakarka. Moreover, it can also manifest in the way that you won't be knowing where to exert your energy, in what what would be the better, like the better fruits, what would be the better project or better karma I should invest my time, my efforts in, so that I could reap better result. Like I'm explaining it with respect to a sport. So particularly if you are playing cricket actually, and you are the person who is taking runs very fastly, you are not good at fielding, you are not good at batting or bowling, but it is the running or taking runs or running on the pitch is something you do very quickly. So you are misaligned here. Why? Because you are more of an athlete and you can do better in the races, in 100-meter races or something like that. So this is a kind of explanation which I am trying to give you here, and it will also apply in the general efforts you are putting in your life, like your workplace, your family, your promotions, your projects, everything. So this is a kind of disbalance which you will feel with this particular Mars. Moreover, with the marriage and alliance coming in and activating in your life, basically you are getting married to a person, and he or she is the person bringing in those karakas of Mars in your life. So what actually, this is something which I forgot to tell you. People who are having Mars as their Darakarka, they should never give up gymming or some sports activities in their life. Otherwise, they might face injuries on their body, or the problems with their basically functioning of body parts. So this is important because you people want this Mars and energy to be exerted somewhere. So now let's jump on to your spouse. So coming back to the spouse, when you're having this marriage alliance and everything activated in your life, the Martian energy would be entering from another source in your life. So when you have Mars as your Darakarka, actually the battles or fights in married life cannot be avoided specifically. That is for sure. Why? Because you are having misaligned energy of Mars and the person is having heavy energy of Mars in them. So when they are coming in, they are having this kind of aggressive nature which is more balanced, but your aggressive nature is also present, but it is disbalanced, you see. So that is why the complex is being created. Next thing is, the person would be very upfront, forthright, and he or she would be ready to fight with people against against your exploitation as well. Why? Because they would believe that you are never fighting with people and you are the one who is never answering them back. You are not in, they would be frustrated on this fact that why are you not giving this person a befitting reply. You see, so this is because, why? Because they are having heavy Martian influence in their personality. So they would want to slap the person who is exploiting you. They would want to fight with the person who is exploiting you. So basically they are this worried in the marriage, in the alliance, and they are this kind of a mind, they are having this kind of a mindset that he or she is my spouse, like you are my spouse, and I can fight with them at my home, I can say them whatever I want, but you cannot say them whatever you want. You see, this is what is their belief with Mars as a Darakarka in your chart. Your spouse's belief is something which I am telling about. Moreover, your spouse would be having a prominent forehead, a wide prominent forehead. They would be having a square shaped face and they would be having this athletic body. They would be fit basically, and they would be more agile, and all of these positive karakas of Mars would be present in them. They would be regularly doing the gymming and all of these sports activities since they were 27. So since they were 27, there was not a single day when they did not go running or something like that. You see, there was this kind of a physical activity present each day in their life till from the activation of Mars. Moreover, you will also see that Mars as a Darakarka is also a protector. You see, why warrior is fighting the war? Because he is there out protecting the homeland. So the protector shield is something also which will be activated from the side of your spouse. So this thing goes well with females actually. If you are a female having Mars as your Darakarka, it's a very good placement, because Mars is something which you need, and Mars in Nadi astrology, in Nadi Jyotish, actually represents the spouse, and you are having your Mars as a Darakarka, so it's a very good placement. It's aligning itself with the Karakas. But the problem is with the males. When you are having your Mars as a Darakarka, your wife is the person who would want to take the lead in the team, and you are having Mars in your chart. You are also Mars in your build. The God has designed you to be having these kind of aggressive tones in your personality. The God has designed you to have this hoarse voice and those Martian traits in your personality, those other Martian traits. And when you have the Darakarka Mars, these all, like the ultimate standard of the Mars is somewhere lacking in your personality, and the person, your wife, is fulfilling it. You see, there is kind of a disbalance which is created in the marriage alliance again. So it is better for all the males to have a compromised Mars in your chart. If you have a very strong Mars in your chart with this particular placement as the Darakarka, it would get more complicated in the married life. It would get more, more troubling in the married life. Why? Because there is this yin yang. You see, there are the specific roles which are designed, the God has designed us to do. And when the femininity is more from Venus and the masculinity is more from the Mars, you cannot intermingle those both. And when there is this disbalance, the Venus is having more Mars and the Mars is having more Venus, you are more of a humble nature, more down to earth person, more feminine in your movements, in your approaches, and your wife is the person who is more of a masculine person, who is more of a fighting warrior spirit kind of a person. The problem would be created. So it is better to have a compromised Mars if you are a male and it is the Darakarka in your chart. Otherwise, if your Venus is not compromised, like if your Venus gets compromised and your Mars is well placed in the chart with Darakarka, with the status of Darakarka, it would be very difficult for you to navigate the alliance. But now here I would also want to add, because of this negative traits which I have explained to you, that there are remedies, and with this particular placement, Rahu becomes very important to be checked. If your Rahu is very strong and if your Mars is also very strong, then you are in a better place again. You see, because Rahu is somewhere channelizing your Darakarka and your Venus is compromised. When your Mars is well placed, then Venus, and Rahu is also well placed. So Rahu can mitigate those problems. So the remedies could be worshipping goddess Kalratri, or worshipping all the feminine goddess with more tamasic energies, or visiting their temple specifically. All of those things could be manifested. Moreover, you can also, as I've said, do not quit gymming or sports activity in your life. That is very important. And if you will do sports activities like basically swimming with your partner post marriage, it would really mitigate all of these troubles a lot. Why? Because you are exerting your energy in a kind of a sport. So all of those bad negative problems, those malefic nature of the planet Mars won't be manifested in your life post marriage. So, you know, with Mars, this is a kind of blessing we have, that we can mitigate it from our purusharth, from our efforts. Otherwise, for the other planets, it's very difficult to, you know, navigate the problem, to navigate the situation or mitigate the problems. But it is better with Mars if you can give that much of effort in your life. Moreover, I have explained the working of the Darakarka in the introduction part of the video. Go watch it, so you will have a better understanding where to, you know, how to apply the remedies, and the understanding of the Darakarka Mars would be more meaningful for you. So now let's move forward and let's understand the planet Jupiter as your Darakarka planet. Now when you will have Jupiter as your Darakarka planet in your D1 chart, you will see that the Jupiter and its traits would be negatively manifesting in your life. Now here I am taking into consideration the fact that this planet as your Darakarka is between 0 to 5 degrees, not more than that, because the interpretation would change then a little bit. So when Jupiter is the Darakarka, so the negative traits of the Jupiter would be felt by you. So maybe you were not very, you never had great teachers in your life, or you never had that guidance, you know, which you think if you would have gotten, you would have been at a better place right now. With Jupiter as a Darakarka, you want to learn more, you want to get the guidance, you want to get associated with a mentor, with a guru, but it is very difficult for you to find one, or to trust, the build the trust on someone. With Jupiter as your Darakaraka, you might also see a very strange kind of a relationship with your father. But it is not like your relationship with your father would be ruined with this Jupiter as a Darakaraka, but somehow it would be strange, like it would be other than the normal, like the normal relations out there in the world. So maybe your father was there with you, and he was with your family, and he spent the time, he was there, but he was not that much responsible or something like that, you see. Or maybe if he had this thing in his mind that he is responsible also, still somehow he was unable to cater to his responsibilities towards the family and towards you, with Jupiter as your Darakaraka. Now we'll jump on to your spouse and what we can what we can decode about your spouse with this Darakaraka Jupiter. So when your Jupiter is Darakaraka, the first and the foremost thing which you'll see in your spouse's personality would be that they would be chubby a little bit, and they would be like their aura, their personality and their representation, like the clothes they wear, the way they talk, would be very much balanced, as if a mentor or a guru or a teacher is talking. They'll be very calm, they would be very soft when they speak, they would be very organized. So they would be the desired person to marry actually. When you have Jupiter as a Darakaraka, Jupiter as Darakaraka for females is really a very good placement actually, because when you have this Jupiter as a Darakaraka, it represents a man who is really very responsible, who can shoulder all the responsibilities alone. He does not need you. You see, this is what this Jupiter Darakaraka represent. Moreover, the people males like you, if you have the males having Jupiter as a Darakaraka, you would see that your spouse, your wife, would be very kind of a, she'll be playing this role of a mentor, of a guide in your life. She would be coming in to support you from, the support which you did not get from the other people out there, like which you would have gotten from your father or from your mentors or teachers in your life. University education also suffers with this particular placement of the Jupiter as your Darakaraka. Like maybe you did not complete your post graduation, or somehow you never enrolled in that particular university setup or something like that. One more thing which you will see is that Jupiter as a Darakaraka can also give your spouse this kind of a behavior that they would pressurize you to learn new things after the marriage takes place. So maybe if you are you never drove a cycle in your life ever, but they would tell you and they would actually make you learn all the vehicles, all the two-wheeler and the four-wheeler also even. So this is really a good kind of a placement. Jupiter, whenever it becomes Darakaraka, automatically the quality of marriage enhances. So it is a very good placement if your Jupiter is not compromised in the chart, in the D1, in the D9. So yes, there is this guarantee you can say that you will be having in the married life. With the word compromised, I mean it is not impacted by moon or it is not impacted by Rahu with this particular, in your particular chart D1, or if it is not combust or retrograde in your D1 chart. So if it is in a very good position, in a neutral position also, sitting in Virgo, Gemini sign, or even in the third house also, this Jupiter can really manifest in a very good way. So it is really a good placement. Moreover, the other thing which I wanted to tell you, that wealth is also the Karaka of Jupiter. So you will see that you are more wealthy after marriage. So maybe if you are working, so you will see your salary is getting enhanced, or you collectively, like you as a couple, are earning more than you were doing before. And you would see that your spouse would be either connected to wealth, money, somehow, maybe they are working in a bank or something like that, or they'll be bringing that kind of Karak in your life. The wealth and the money Karak, monetary Karak basically. So this is really a very good placement, Jupiter, to have. You will be having a spouse as your guide in your life, as a teacher in your life. He or she will nudge you to do new things, to explore new areas, and it is really a very harmonious relationship and marriage which we can see with Jupiter as your Darakarka. Let's move forward. Let's understand the planet Mercury as your Darakarka. Now when you have Mercury as your Darakaraka, what you will see is that the Mercury's negative manifestation would be present in your life. You won't be able to calculate that, how to spend and how to make money or how to multiply my money. You see, you are not that money minded person with this Mercury as your Darakaraka. Moreover, the second thing is that whenever your Mercury is Darakaraka, you really feel it very challenging to aimlessly connecting with people through communication. Like, why do I need to talk with this person when I do not have any work with them? This is the mindset you will have with this Mercury, and this can be also a challenge in your life. Why? Because you with this placement will not be able to make new friends, like whatever your friends were in the childhood at the age of 2, 3 or like 4, 15 years. Since then you won't be able to make new friends, or your friend group would be very, very small, like only it would be consisting only 2 to 3 people. So this is how it becomes challenging for you. With this particular placement, there are also sometimes challenges seen from the side of siblings. Maybe your relationship with them gets strained, or you face some issues in life with them, particularly if your Mercury is not well placed and it is compromised in the D1 chart. So you will see these things happening their side also, but basically it is all about friends, your maternal relatives and your cousins. So maybe your maternal relatives and your cousins are the people you would hate most with this particular Mercury's placement as your Darakaraka. The analysis I will be telling you here is pertaining to the fact that your Mercury and your Darakaraka is placed between 0 to 5 degrees. If it is beyond that, the interpretation would differ a bit. Okay, so let's jump on to your spouse. How we can decode that person with this Mercury Darakaraka. So if I have to be very honest with you, females having this placement Mercury as their Darakaraka can be challenging at times. Why? We'll understand it technically. Challenging in terms because Mercury is a planet which is all about youth, which is all about energy, which is all about enjoying, which is all about connecting with people, which is all about friends, sibling, and it is gender neutral. So what it represents is that it is filled with scattered energy. So when the Mercury is filled with scattered energy, it becomes very difficult for the other person, your spouse, to maintain this relationship of responsibility, because marriage is the relationship, it is a heavy responsibility. Marriage brings responsibility, and it is very difficult for other person to understand this. So when Mercury is there, your Darakaraka, it becomes very difficult for the other person to compromise their freedom. This is what is seen. But if Mercury is well placed in your chart, it can also mean that the communication is everything, which is the key to solving all the issues in your life. So basically, yes, the placement can be challenging, but still there is this remedy, there is this technical karak which you can complete with the Mercury, so that the alliance it does not get disturbed with this particular placement. So communication is the key with this particular Mercury in the as a Darakarka. Why? Because you are weak in communication. You don't know how to connect with people, and this is what the other person is. This is what the other person is pro in. You see, they are street smart. They are this person who can do everything. Like, they are the person who are like jack of all trades. If they are put in a completely new environment, they would somehow figure it out how to deal with it. You see, this is the kind of personality of your spouse. So you are the person who is not having Mercurian traits. They are the person who is having huge Mercurian traits. So this is a kind of a student-teacher relationship which you will be seeing in your birth life, in your marriage. Now, with student-teacher, it does not mean that you will have to discipline them. You will have to make them understand, make them learn everything. It would be more of a thing that they are the person, they are the risk taker, and you are the one who is more into the the more mature subjects of the union, of the marriage, like what is to be done, what should be the decision maker is you, and they are the risk taker. So this is how this particular union is like. They are very youthful, they will be having a childlike face, they would be very energetic, they would be very chatty, they would love to talk. It would be very serious for them if you do not talk, and if you say that you are not in the mood to talk, this is the this is for them is the end of the world, this sentence is, because Mercury would be prominently present in their chart. So this is a kind of personality which you can expect of your spouse with this particular placement of the Mercury as your Darakarka. If I have to say about males having this placement of the Mercury as their Darakarka, it would be a very good match. Why? Because in the Nadi, Mercury is the second wife of a person, of a male. This is a kind of a better union which you will see, like it's the person you will get married to as a male with Mercury as a Darakarka would be very jolly kind of a person, and she would want to travel a lot, do adventure and everything. So for males it is a good placement. For females it can be a bit challenging, but it can also be navigated easily. So with Mercury it's not a very big deal. Now if you have to understand the technicalities of the Darakarka in depth, I have explained it in the introduction part of the video. You can go and watch it there, so that the Darakarka and its placement is more meaningful to you. Now let's move forward and let's understand Saturn as your Darakarka in the D1 chart. When you have Saturn as your Darakaraka in your D1 chart, what you will see is that the negative traits of the Saturn would be prominent in your life. It would be manifesting in your life since the start. So maybe you were not getting recognition of your of your work and of your hard work, I would say, and always you had this particular strict, you were taught every lesson in your life in the strict way with this Saturn as your Darakaraka. Maybe you had some problems from your servants also, because Saturn also represents servants, and all of these, there are many things in your particular life. Every lesson in your life you had to learn it in the strict way. But let's jump onto your spouse now. So basically with Saturn as your Darakaraka, what you will see that basically here I am taking into the consideration the fact that 0 to 5 degrees something which your Darakaraka is sitting, because beyond that, if your Darakaraka is higher degrees, sitting at higher degrees, the interpretation would change. Saturn as Darakaraka would give you a spouse who is very humble, who is very down to earth, who really wants to connect with the downtrodden section and wants to do something good for the people who are not that much privileged. They are the people who can really go and converse well with your with anyone's servants, or the people who are struggling in their life. Your spouse would have a prominent trait of becoming successful after a huge struggle. they would have a Saturn dominated chart. So this is for sure that they would have been struggling in their life a lot, and then they got success. This is a theme which will play out. They can also be connected with the judiciary or career wise, but that is something which we'll cover in the upcoming videos, the career of your spouse from your Darakarka. But basically your Saturn is the Darakarka, and balancing out things, organizing things, working on the foundation of something is seen in their personality. So this is the spouse. If you are having some problem with your in-laws and you come to your home, I am telling this for a female who is having Saturn as their Darakaraka, as her Darakaraka. She come to the room and she starts screaming on her husband that, you see, this is how your parents talk to me, and this is what you are doing, and I have been telling you since always, let's move out, and you are not listening, all of these things. So what your spouse would react, what your husband would react in this situation would be that he would calm you down. He would say that sit down and will understand what happened actually. You see, this is the kind of a person you are dealing with when you have Saturn as a Darakaraka. He would want to understand the core of the issue, and if his parents are at the fault or something like that, he would instantly take decision against them. This is also a thing which will be seen. So Saturn as a Darakaraka is a very good thing to have in your chart if you are an honest person. You see, this is the thing. The professor of karma is your spouse, and they are bringing in this lesson in your life that whatever karma you will give out from your side, it will come back to you. So they'll make sure that these things happen in your life. You see, so if you are an honest person, if you are really a simple plain person in your personality, you are not a manipulator, you don't want to play mind games and something like that, you just want to do your work, get out of it and just live the simple life, this is the best placement you can have to the Saturn as your Darakaraka. He or she will be having a certain dark tone in their complexion, like their complexion would be on the darker side of the tone. They will be not very bulky, not very thin. They can be very thin, but they'll also be having this height in their personality. So slim body is something which would enhance their personality. It would not look bad on them. The other thing is that they speak very less, and whenever they speak to the point. This is also a thing which you will see in your spouse. And there are so many other traits which you will see with the coming from the profession side, but law is really a very the instant profession which come to our mind, which is always there in the this axis when you have Saturn as your Darakaraka. But in the most mundane terms, if I have to say career wise, your spouse can be in law, or he can also be a builder with this particular placement. They would also be very respectful to the elders and to the, as I said, to the downtrodden section of the society. They would really respect them, and they would also have this kind of a notion that they would also ask upon the authority and the justification over the religious rituals. This can also be a prominent trait in their personality when you have Saturn in the Darakaraka. Like they would want the evidence of all the religious rituals and everything which is the philosophy which the philosophy of the religion is established on. They would want that evidence. So they would not, so basically they won't be a blind believer or of any faith. They want justification to everything. So this is, and they'll be very hard working, that goes without saying. So this is the kind of a person you will be having when you have Saturn as your Darakaraka. Also, I have explained the basic technical working of the Darakaraka in the introduction part of the video. Go watch it there so that this video becomes more meaningful to you. Let's move forward. Let's understand when you have Rahu and Ketu axis as your Darakaraka. So now when you have Rahu and Ketu axis as your Darakaraka, so the basic thing is that a calculation, the Darakaraka's calculation differs with Rahu-Ketu because they are moving in retrograde motion. So if you are having Rahu-Ketu placed as at 0 degrees or 5 degrees, 2 degrees in your chart, so they are not your Darakaraka. Basically, with the placement calculation differs. So basically Rahu-Ketu acts as your Darakarka. I take like this, some schools of astrology, they do not take it into consideration. But in my particular readings, I have found that it is very important to take Rahu-Ketu in the Darakarka system. So they should be given the status of Atmakarka also, AMATYAKARKA also, and Darakarka also. Because they tell a lot of things, like they disguise themselves in the chart, they portray, they throw a kind of a illusion to the astrologer, and if the astrologer is wise enough to catch them, it is good, otherwise the chart is locked. That is why we say that Rahu-Ketu axis locks the chart. Rahu-Ketu should be taken as the Darakarka, and they should also be given the status of the Atmakaraka, because of the fact that in the Hindu tradition we worship all the Navagrahas in any puja we do. So Rahu-Ketu are included in every puja. They are very important. Alright, we do not take 7 grahas to be worshipped in a system, in our tradition. So Rahu-Ketu is given importance, and they should be taken into consideration while calculating Darakarkas. So when Rahu-Ketu, the axis is your Darakarka, the first thing which will come with this particular placement would be that either the Rahu would be operating as your Darakarka or it would be Ketu. So it is subjective from chart to chart, that either your Rahu would be your Darakarka or the Ketu would be your Darakarka. Now whoever is your Darakarka would be taking on the lead in your life. So if it is Rahu, it is more about future connection and basically connecting out to the people, moving out and getting better in life. If it is Ketu, it is more about the past connections, it is more about the pending karma and all of these things which Ketu represents. But basically whenever the Rahu-Ketu accesses your Darakaraka, it is directing your married life. So when the married life is being directed by the axis, there is this particular thing that the match would be very karmic. And when the matches are karmic, I consider them to not be very good. Why? Because the karmic matches are something which would also bring bad karma in your life. So maybe you would have done something bad to someone in the past life and they are bringing it back in your life again. But the thing is that how would you know that it is only the bad karma or the good karma? You see, this is the main challenge to understand. So if your Rahu-Ketu axis is getting better with chart, it is the thing which is initially it would be the bad karma, but with the time, years passing, it would get better. Moreover, the placement of Saturn matters a lot. If you do not have any retrograde planet, then it is better off, because the retrograde planet and the energy is aligned with Rahu, Ketu, the axis, and then they would also be channelizing this particular marriage. So if I have to be telling you about the spouse, basically I cannot tell you about anything about your spouse. Why? Because Rahu-Ketu are unpredictable. They are very subjective from chart to chart. They take on the skin, they are playing with the colors in a particular chart. They are making some other kind of a figure in some other chart. They are making some other kind of a figure. So it is very subjective with Rahu-Ketu. But the thing is that whoever are the dispositor of these two particular shadow planets, you should check them very crucially, you should check them very keenly wherever they are placed, in whatever sign. Those are the things which would be present in your spouse, but with a twist, because it is Rahu-Ketu of whom we are talking about. Basically Rahu and Ketu, they move in an axis. You see, they are the same entity, but they are working in different domains. You see, this is what the raw agents. A person working here for the country India is also connecting with some operative in some other country, across the border. This is what the axis is like, but they are working towards the same mission. So it is very subjective with the Rahu-Ketu whenever you have them as your Darakarka. But the first thing which you will see is that it will definitely bring in illusion in your life. So the first thing would be that whenever you'll meet your spouse, whatever the personality you will decode of your spouse would be very delusional. You would completely decode them wrong. This is the first thing which you will get. If the axis is good, it is well placed in your chart, you will get to know the real nature of the person with time, and you will adjust with it, because it is a karma which is attached with that particular person and you have to deal with it. And if not, things can go haywire. But basically, Rahu-Ketu is, if they are in very strong position in your chart, and if you see that your 7th lord, your Venus, your Mars specifically for females, and your 7th house of the D9 is very well placed, so it can also give you a hint that marriage is very important for you. Specifically, if you are born in the Mahadasha of Rahu or Ketu, basically your moon is sitting in either the nakshatra of Rahu or in the nakshatra of Ketu, then marriage is very important for you. So dealing with this karma, whatever it is, either bad or good, is very important for you. It will bring you growth. Why? Because the Rahu-Ketu axis matures at like post 40 in your life. So till the age of 40 years is something, even if the bad karma is written with this Rahu-Ketu, you would only see it before the age of 40 manifesting in your life. After that, you will see tremendous growth in your life, because you have dealt with that karma, you have burned it. You see, burning of karma is what is attached to every birth. We are here to do our karma, right? So burning the karma is very important with this Rahu-Ketu and it becoming your Darakarka, the axis. Basically, whenever you will see the periods of Rahu-Ketu, either their Mahadasha, their Antardashas, or their Pratyantar, you would see something happening in your 7th house, in your in your love life, or something coming from that area in your life. It would be coming in. Now, if you have to check if your Rahu-Ketu is good or not, or something like if it is bringing bad karma or not, you can study these particular time periods and windows to get to know what their actual nature is. But if I have to decode it very simply to you, it is all about the dispositors, wherever they are placed and however they are working in your D1 chart. Whatever the axis the Rahu-Ketu's dispositor are making, like in some charts I have seen that the Rahu-Ketu's dispositor are conjunct. So you see, whatever the energy is there, specifically whatever that conjunction, whatever the energy of the conjunction is, becomes very important for you in marriage. So this is how you will decode the axis as your Darakarka. And this was I have decoded the Darakarka in a more meaningful way in the introduction part of the video. You should go and watch it there, so that you can get better understanding of the working of the Darakarka. But basically, that technicality which I have shared there would not affect the Rahu-Ketu. Why? Because we have to take this into consideration that they are moving in opposite direction. They are always retrograde. So this was my understanding about the Darakarkas and the planets as a Darakarka, their behavior, the working of the Darakarka in your chart. If you have to take Rahu-Ketu axis of your Darakarka or not, you should definitely take it. They are very important. And let me know in the comment section below how you feel about this video. Share it with your friends and family. And thank you for watching.